Hey guys, Alan here, Solid Rock Bible Class. Hey, I am so glad you're with me. We are going to be talking about release, the power of being released. I'm going to be in Acts the 12th chapter with us, by the way. And I don't think anybody likes to be in bondage. No one likes to be trapped. Kind of makes you a little on the claustrophobic side, doesn't it? I'm going to go down and I just want to catch a few verses here, and it's a scripture that we're fairly familiar with, and I'm not going to read the entire chapter here. In fact, I'll probably read these first few verses, and after that we'll just kind of hit the highlights of some verses. But in Acts the 12th chapter, picking up in verse 1, it says, "Now about the time Herod the king stretched forth his hand to vex certain of the church, and he killed James, the brother of John, with a sword. And because he saw it please the Jews, he proceeded further to take Peter also. Then were the days of unleavened bread. And when he had apprehended him, he put him in prison. He delivered him into the four quarters of the soldiers to keep him." So we see here in this first little piece of this that Peter is being thrown in jail. Absolutely nothing he's done wrong here. It's just unfortunate circumstances. You might even call it politics to some degree here. We see that it's pleasing the Jews and Herod's doing it. So it's nothing he had done wrong. And sometimes we kind of find ourselves entrapped by things many times that we didn't do wrong. Sometimes we're in bondage from things that had nothing to do with something we did that was incorrect. And sometimes when we look at prison, and sometimes when we look at bondage, it is because of some of our own actions or some of our own stupidity sometimes. And I know that many times I've done the stupid tax thing many times and ended up in bad situations because I just made poor decisions. Sometimes it could be habits, maybe addictions. It doesn't have to be something like illegal drugs, but it could just be bad habits that put us there. It could be impure thoughts that put us there. It could be just, again, extremely poor choices, maybe poor financial choices that put us in some kind of a entrapment there. But no matter how that we get there, we need to realize Satan himself, he wants to keep us there. And not only does he want to keep us there, he wants to parade us around. He wants to take and parade us with shame so that we will not take and serve God properly. But I want us to look at a couple additional verses as we get down through here. So we see that Peter's in jail. Nothing that he did that was wrong. And I want us to pick up in verse number 5, and it says, "Peter, therefore, was kept in prison." But I want you to notice something here. It says, "But prayer was made without ceasing of the church unto God for him." So as we look at that particular verse, it's kind of interesting, isn't it? There's prayers that are going up for Peter. I think many times as Christians we forget to pray. We forget to earnestly pray, don't we? We need to pray not only for ourselves, not only for our family, but for people that are around us, that they'll be freed from the bondage. Just like they were praying that Peter would take and get out of prison. So let's go just a little bit further here. Let's look at this power here that frees us. What frees us from these problems? What frees us in our life from this bondage? And it says, "And when Herod would have brought him forth the same night, Peter was sleeping between two soldiers, bound with two chains, and the keepers before the door kept the prison." Notice, he has two guards one on each side. He's in a locked cell. There's guards on the cell. He's on the innermost part of the prison here. Verse 7. And behold, the angel of the Lord came unto him, and a light shined in the prison. And he smote Peter on the side, and raised him up, saying, Arise up quickly. And his chains fell off from his hands. Notice a couple of things that's going on here. The church is praying that he's freed. We look at this power now. What does this power bring to us? What power does the power of prayer come to us with? What is the power of God that works within our life? First of all, notice something. He's in dire circumstances. Many times we're in dire circumstances, right? And we see the light in verse 7. The light shines around him. All of a sudden, he can see in all this darkness. I have no idea if guards could see or if anybody else could see this light, but Peter could see the light, and he could see what was around him. It brought him out of darkness into a position of light here. And I think we need to realize light shining in darkness is a huge piece that we need from God. We need that inspiration within our life of being able to see our circumstances. The next thing to notice here in verse 7 is that the chains taken, they just fell off of him. And I'm sure they were on there. I'm sure they were on there with some good locks. But the chains just fell off from him. Let's catch, I want to read verses 7 and 8 here just real quick. In verse 7 again, and behold, the angel of the Lord came unto him, and the light shined in the prison, and he smote Peter. Notice, he pokes Peter and wakes him up. Peter's asleep. And raised him up, saying, notice, he shined a light on him, poked him in the ribs here, stood him up. And he says, arise up quickly. And his chains fell off his hands. Verse 8, and the angel said unto him, gird thyself and bind on thy sandals. And so he did. And he saith unto him, cast thy garment about thee and follow me. Notice something here. The chains fall off. He is now enabled. He has the ability, not only with the light to see where he's at, but now the chains are gone. He has the ability to move around. Now don't forget, he's in the innermost part of the prison here. And the thing we need to realize, we are enabled. God gives us the power, but we also have to do something. And we're going to see that as we look just a little bit further. We have to do just a little bit on our own, don't we? Verse 8, it says, the angel said unto him, gird thyself up. He says, get yourself together. Put on your shoes. He said, put on your garments. Follow me. Notice, he gives him a direction. And he says, follow me. He points him the right way. Doesn't God do that for us? He picks us up. He dusts us off. He knocks the chains off. He lets us see what's going on around us. Then he turns us around and gives us a good shove the right direction. But we still have some things we have to do. Verse 9, it says, and he went out and followed him, and wist not that it was true, which was done by the angel, but thought he saw a vision. So, he gave him that direction in verse 9. As we kick down into verse number 10, we see that he's protected. As he goes through the prison, he gets the chains off, but he now goes through a door that's locked that has guards. He goes through several prison cells on his way out. And all of a sudden, he finds himself on the outside of the prison, and he's shaking his head and he's saying, "Is this a dream? What's going on here?" See, God does some things for us that we can't do for ourselves. There's no way Peter could have done that on his own. How could he get past all those guards? How could he get through the doors? How could he get through the locked doors? See, God does, He directs us, He protects us, and He does things we can't do. Let me go back here. I want to read verse 10 just real quick here. In verse 10 it says, "And when they were past the first and the second ward, they came into the iron gate that leadeth into the city, which opened unto them in his own accord. And they went out and passed through one street, and forthwith the angel departed from him." So, he protected him all the way through the prison, all the way through those different chambers or areas. He did something that only God could do. But notice, Peter had to do some things on his own. He had to stand, and he had to follow directions. He had to listen to what this angel was telling him. As he gets outside the gates of the prison, the angel departs. In verse 11, we see that Peter realizes where he's at. He realizes that God has brought him all the way out of the prison. In verse number 12, I'm not going to read down into some of this, but we see that Peter goes to where all the Christians are gathered, and they're there and they're praying for him. He knocks persistently in verses 13 through 16. And they couldn't believe it was Peter. They says, no, we're praying for Peter to get out of jail. He can't be here. See, Peter was released from this bondage. So, are you in bondage of some sort today? You know, not all bondage is sin necessarily. But many times we're caught in bondage. It may be a bondage of our finances. It can be a bondage of our weight. It can be a bondage of a bad habit. You know, maybe it's just a matter that life just boxed you in. But the thing is that God is there to help. He's there to shine the light on the situation. He's there to break the shackles of it. And you have the ability, with God's help, because there's certain things only God can do, to be totally free of it. Hey, this is Alan. I hope to catch up with you tomorrow. Bye-bye.